Thank you very much to everyone joining us for the first ever panel. And I'm I feel privileged to be able to be hosting the first panel with such fabulous people. So it's called Renewal, Disruption, and the Economics of Scholarly Communication. It's something that we all have in our minds or have nightmares about, but different stories. I am just going to hand it off one by one. We, of course, have Niels joining in online. We have sometimes referred to this as like the overlord. So he's monitoring us. Niels is, we won't miss him. Let's just say that he's right there. So Niels, going to you, would you mind giving us an introduction to yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for having me, at least online, at this event today. I'm really pleased to be here. Yes, my name is Niels Stern. I'm Managing Director of the OAPEN Foundation, and we operate the OAPEN Library, which is a library it's a platform for open access, peer-reviewed books. And it was set up by university presses in Europe over 15 years ago. And today we have more than 45,000 titles on the platform. It's an open source platform. It's hosted at CERN in Geneva. And then we also operate the Directory of Open Access Books, which is an index, just like DOAJ, but for books. And DOAB is also based on quality criteria, peer review, open licensing, and so on. But it's a free self-service to publishers once they have been evaluated. And so we have more publishers, around 800 publishers using DOAB. We have over 100,000 titles listed from publishers all over the world. Many in Latin America, Europe and North America, not so many in Asia, and that's why I'm currently in South Korea, traveling. So yeah, I think that's enough for an introduction for now.
And thanks. Niels, it's about 11 p.m. at the moment where you are, right? Around
True.
That time.
Yeah.
So can we please give him a round of applause for joining us so late? Thank you, Niels.
Thank you.
You don't look sleepy, for the record. You look absolutely awake. Lauren, would you like to?
Yes, am I on? Yes. Okay. Hi, I'm Lauren Collister. I am Research Engagement Manager with Invest in Open Infrastructure. And IOI, as I will refer to our short name, because Invest in Open Infrastructure is quite a mouthful. Our mission is to increase the investment in and adoption of open infrastructure. It's right in our name. And we do this through research, and support and consultation on the systems that power open infrastructure, whether that's financially, through labor, or through governance and policy support. I also am an editor on the board for Katina Magazine's Open Knowledge section, and get the pleasure of working with many of you in this room on articles related to open knowledge. And if anybody's interested in learning more about Katina and our section, please do talk to me. I'd love to talk to you about that as well. So that's a very brief introduction, but I guess we'll get to talk a little bit more shortly.
Thank you so much. And yes, you are at the right place to get information about Katina for sure. Yes, please, Alicia.
Hi, everybody. My name's Alicia Wise, and I'm the Executive Director of the Clocks Digital Archive, which is a not-for-profit collaboration between academic libraries and academic publishers. And we secure academic information and other elements of the scholarly record in 12 encrypted secure vaults in 12 different research institutions around the world, including here in Berlin at Humboldt University.
Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Daniel Hook. I'm CEO of Digital Science. Many of you will probably know who we are, but for those of you who don't, we have a database called Dimensions, which is built on a lot of open data and mixed with enhanced data that we try to bring together to give people insights into the scholarly ecosystem. One of the most interesting things that I think we're doing with that at the moment is looking at bad actors through the different combinations of data that we can bring together. It's quite interesting to be able to look at who are the nefarious actors in the ecosystem, where are their paper mills. Given that open seems to be the theme, our other big product is a product called Overleaf, which is where academics come to collaborate on writing scholarly manuscripts in LaTeX, and that is a product that also has a large open source component and that gives back to the community through a number of different ways in that kind of physics, computer science world.
Oh, okay. What we'll do is we will just bring up, if our back-end technology can bring up the volume a little bit, and also when we're holding the mic right up there, mic control. Heather knows a bit about that. So right up there, if you don't mind. Yeah, that should work. Yeah, okay. So would you be able to talk right there?
I can try.
There we
Any
go.
better?
Is that better? Can you hear better?
Okay. Okay, it's really close. Okay, fine.
Yeah, so we'll have a pickup in the back as well if you can increase the volume for both mics. Okay, they went off for a second, the microphones. Are they on? No, they're not.
Hello, hello.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's much better, I think, from my side at least. Can you hear it back there? Okay.
And this one? Okay, good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for letting us know. Again, this with these panels, I think not just about, you know, volume or whatever. If you have something burning you want to ask, just do. But I would like to pass a microphone to you when you speak as well, so our digital participant can hear. So with the introductions out of the way, right, before we jump into the questions, because I have some really, really interesting questions planned. Well, you all know the questions roughly anyways. So I'm just going to start off saying scholarly communications is often described as being in a state of disruption, but sometimes you say disruption, but what does that actually mean? Everybody uses disruption in one way or another, but we need to think about the relevancy to the context we're talking about at the moment. The more interesting question is what kind of disruption we're actually experiencing. Is this real transformation that creates new value and new models, or are we just reshuffling the same structures under new names? So that's the main thing that we'll look at today. So today's session looks at this moment through the lens of creative destruction, keeping with the theme we have, not as a buzzword, but as an economic and structural reality. Who is building? Who is breaking? And most importantly, who benefits as the system evolves? So we brought together this fabulous group of people who I had the pleasure to bring this together with to help us unpack what's actually changing beneath the surface and what a genuinely sustainable future look like. That sounds like a tall order, but I think we can get close, right? Right? Niels, can I get a nod from you as well? That we can, oh, there we go. We got our affirmation. I'll start off with I had an order, but Daniel, you have the mic, so let me start off with you. So digital science sits at a unique intersection of data, analytics, and research systems. I think a lot of us know this. Where are you seeing the biggest shifts in how value is created, captured, and redistributed in scholarly communications today?
Interesting. So this is a massive question. Yes, you're right. We do have this interesting position to hold in the space because essentially the way I view digital science quite often is as a kind of an honest broker where we have good relationships with funders, we have good relationships with publishers, we have good relationships with academics and institutions. So all of those different kind of facets come together in what we do at digital science. And a lot of what we're doing is trying to understand the problem from each of those different perspectives and work out what the kind of common embryonic thing is inside what's going on there. So to the question that Jude thoughtfully brought up, I think that I'm seeing quite an interesting shift in the role that the balance of power, if you will, between funders and the rest of the space. Historically, I think we've always thought of the funders as the people who are kind of driving policy and consequently who are driving how publishers end up acting, how institutions need to act, and how researchers are interpreting those needs in order to get their funding to do their research. And I think that has always been on the back of this kind of, in most countries, this kind of compact that exists between government and the taxpayer, the voter, where you are seeing, you know, an implicit community basically saying, yes, we are okay for public money to be spent on research. And what's going on in that now, I think, is that fewer people are minded to go to university because the youth of today are seeing that they can learn quite a lot from an AI. And consequently, do they want to be spending a large amount of money or getting a large kind of tax bill, increased taxes or increased student loans as a result of going to university? And at the other end, you're seeing universities switch, to our first speaker's point, we're seeing them switch towards applied research and away from blue skies research. And we're seeing this particularly in UK policy. And what that's doing, I think, is making universities shorter term and companies like the big AI companies longer term. You can go to an AI company, you can earn a salary which is 10 times what you can earn in a university, and you can have quite a lot of freedom in order to do kind of blue skies research in that context. So not in all fields, but in some fields, we're definitely seeing a switch. And that means that the AI companies may end up owning the future, so to speak. And I think that's quite dangerous. But what the other kind of side of that is that publicly there's a whole piece of work by a woman called Mariana Mazzucato, who I'm sure many of you know, and if you don't, she's a name you should look up because she's absolutely brilliant. And she wrote this book called The Entrepreneurial State. And her argument is that all the companies like Apple have made all their money based on public innovation and public goods that were funded by the state and that were made available for companies to build on and to become, you know, to return to society. But what's happening is that those companies are not paying back into the tax burden of the country, and they're becoming very rich, but they're finding tax loopholes in order not to pay back. And so I see a fundamental disconnect in the kind of social compact where we as taxpayers fund research, because we used to do that because we were going to get something back. We were going to get better healthcare, we were going to get innovation in the economy, we were going to get redistribution of funds, people were going to be taxed, and that was going to come back and make the world better for all of us. And I think the current constellation that we're seeing, that's starting to break. And I think funders are kind of the linchpin between these worlds now. And I think they are finding it more and more difficult time to justify the use of public funds in the way that they're deploying it. And consequently, their policy lens is changing in ways that's going to have profound effects for the economics and for how our sectors work. And we're seeing this in the UK with, 30% cuts to various different fields. This is starting to now come down the line. And so I see that as one of the great challenges of our time, because I buy into everything that our keynote speaker said today about how innovation comes out of universities, how they are the engines that provide goods to the world. And I think that we're in a very dangerous period right now. A very long answer, sorry.
No, Daniel, I just have a quick follow-up. So if, for example, let's just say you have the Anthropics, the Googles, the big AI companies right in front of you, and you are representing this industry as a whole, what kind of conversations would you like to have in open dialogue with them?
So I'll offer, I think, three perspectives. The first perspective is that I was at an excellent meeting in Cambridge last year on AI sovereignty. And it was a Chatham House Rules meeting. I will say that one of the big AI companies was there. And they basically, their line, which I thought was brave in front of a room of academics, but they were very transparent. They basically said, the UK is not going to be a place we're going to invest. Your copyright laws are too restrictive. Your energy is too expensive. And you have talent, but we'll transplant that. And I thought that was at some level very honest, which I thought was a good thing. And at another level was quite chilling because it shows you where the economic incentives are pushing things to go. So that's one thing I will share. I think the second thing is that we in this room and more generally are very hung up on copyright law and thinking about what copyrights go where, how we shepherd copyright, how we think about creativity. And I think there's definitely a conversation to be had there. But I think the third conversation is far more important, which is around paying tax. So if I only had 2 minutes and I had to do an elevator pitch, I would be pitching them to pay tax, because I think that's the critical thing. I think everything else is ancillary. I think there are bad things going on. But if they don't pay tax back into the system, then we are going to have social unrest. We're going to have all sorts of things that happen at a broader level, which is going to make society more difficult to work with.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. So Alicia, so coming to your perspective, so from a vantage point across preservation and infrastructure, what are the most significant challenges currently facing scholarly communication, and are current stakeholder responses helping resolve them or compounding them?
Great question. And I'm actually going to pivot from what Daniel has opened with, because I think he's created a very compelling vision of some of the current dynamics that we're all struggling with on a day-to-day basis. But from the perspective of a digital archivist at the moment, taking a step back and to be more gloomy, I think that period of social unrest is already upon us. Think about the last quarter, where UNESCO has added more than 30 countries to a list of those where cultural and intellectual heritage is at risk because of war, joining places like the Sudan and Ukraine and elsewhere. So geopolitically, we are on fire. We are seeing content manipulated by government actors, removed from the web by autocratic despots in various parts of the world. We have an environmental crisis where the planet is burning and we don't know how to respond, and we're not effectively engaging collectively, to add to earthquakes and tsunamis and other things that can happen. We have many examples around us of organizational failure, companies collapsing, disappearing, being acquired, and that pace is increasing. And then there are just normal human accidents in terms of knowledge. So digital information is inherently at risk. Content is now in active play between nation states about who will control it. Is it the elected government? Is it the commercial entities? Is it collaborative grassroots initiatives? For example, open access advocates and those who are actors in that space. And at our peril, I think we continue to retreat to the chasms and the gaps that might exist at the minute between libraries and funders and scholars and publishers. We have more in common in these kinds of discussions than we have dividing us, and yet we're not acting in a unified and joined up way. So I feel I'm not answering your question, Jude.
No, you are in some form.
I feel really that we need to up our game profoundly, and that things that we hold dear and that the future of our species require, free access to knowledge and information, is completely at risk at the minute, and we are sleepwalking into that future.
I just have a quick follow-up to that. Just a really small one. So you gave quite a large perspective. You know, it is something that we all contend with, and I think it is very relevant to a larger perspective. Can you bring it back into the industry a little bit and tell us how it meets us at our day-to-day a little bit more as well?
Thank you. Yes. So the Dutch Royal Library has recently begun a discussion internationally about what a global resilient information network could look like. And they convened some of us in January in a very rainy part of the Netherlands to think about that. And essentially, the context there was, think of World War III having already started. And what do we need to do as actors in the information environment to retain our ability to contribute knowledge, to share knowledge, to continue generating it, and to continue to be able to access it? And quite profoundly, we need to change a lot of things right now. If you have any content or information that is crucial for your organization or your customers, and it is only retained in your organization or a single country, it is fundamentally at risk. Content, particularly digital content, needs to be in multiple jurisdictions in order and stored and managed in ways that are free from individual governments, individual organizational control, individual governance regimes or funding regimes, if it is to be resilient and part of our future knowledge network. And libraries don't think that way. They think about preserving their collections. Publishers don't think that way. They think about preserving their content, their ability to compete. We need radical collaboration if World War III is coming, and certainly if it's already here, but not yet defined.
Thank you. Thank you. That really helps. And so coming to you, Lauren, don't look so distressed. I was just about to say something that's very relevant, but also echoing what the pre-work we did. I had the chance of looking at the amazing work of the working document that you shared. You had quite a lot of very pivotal topics. So picking a question for you was quite a little bit of work. No, please. You actually activated a lot of good discussion. So let's start off with this. So open infrastructures are under increasing pressure to adopt. Based on your work with initiatives like InfraFinder and the Bridge Project, how are organizations responding to these changing conditions? And where are you seeing corporations succeed versus fragmentation?
This is a topic very close to my heart. So in the spirit of this panel so far, I would like to pivot a little bit, but also build on
pivoting all over, don't worry.
It builds on what the previous two speakers have said, but I want to offer a moment of hope in our human condition. I know,
always a good thing.
I know. You can count on me, I guess, to bring that perspective. But it's informed by my work with open infrastructures, because what I am seeing in my work at IOI and my work as a linguist that does research and publishing with the open infrastructure all the time and work with many people who do that, is that, and again, I'm going to be speaking a lot about open infrastructures, but I think this is extensible. Open infrastructure is its own ecosystem, and it has these distinctive characteristics. And one of those is that a major response to challenges in our space is through cooperation and collaboration. And this is an idea that has always existed, of course, but it's just becoming visible in a variety of new and different ways. The idea behind it is that we don't need to do everything by ourselves. The open science ecosystem, sector, whatever you want to call it, is not a young sector anymore. We're not constantly having to make things that don't exist. This ecosystem is maturing, and as such, the behavior of the people in it is changing a little bit. And in the opening keynote, he talked about frontier innovation, and I really see that as something that is happening, because an outcome of that view that we don't have to do everything by ourselves and that we can share with others, not only our data and our publications, but our knowledge broadly, is that when we strengthen the infrastructures around us, we strengthen the entire ecosystem and everybody benefits. And if the choice is made to strengthen our own ecosystem, we can look for things that in acting in cooperation and in community will lift us all up, instead of creating an alternate ecosystem or creating another place for people to go. So this becomes very clear when there are threats from the outside. And of course, AI is the topic of the day, and thinking about AI's disruption and perhaps creative disruption of the scholarly communication ecosystem is a way to expose this. Because big AI companies come in, and we've heard stories, I'm sure you've heard stories, from small repositories or collections or libraries who've just been barraged by bots, to the point where either they have these escalating cloud service costs, or their servers are taken down, or something awful has happened. In the beginning, there was just scattered responses, everybody fighting fires, trying to stay afloat, doing their own thing. But what's happened since then? Everybody's starting to come together, whether it's in specific sector or interest groups from a particular platform like the Fedora AI Working Group, or whether it's cross-sector like the AI Bridges Project that's bringing in people with different perspectives to talk about real solutions. IOI and our Bridge project that you mentioned, thank you, Jude, for the plug. We're trying to convene people from different sectors like publishing, open infrastructure, AI companies. We got to hear more about your experience there, Daniel, and the conversations that you had, libraries, research labs, et cetera, who are interested in strengthening the commons for use by both humans and the AI tools to lift us all up. And in looking in these ways, the ways that we can work together, cooperate, not necessarily in competition, but understanding all of our own strengths and our own contributions to our own ecosystem and where we really excel, instead of duplicating effort, wasting time, and trying to outcompete everybody, that's when we can really have success. And that's where we can see real renewal and that frontier innovation that Philippe was talking about earlier. So that's my spiel.
Thank you, Lauren. So last, of course, but not least in this round, looking up to you, Niels. So OAPEN, or OAPEN, operates at the intersection of open infrastructure and scholarly books. How has the rise of AI affected your model, and what financial implications are emerging from these changes? As you know, AI is disruptive in many ways, but I think this is a specific thing that a lot of us would like to know about.
Yep. Well, thank you for that question, and I think it sort of follows quite natural from what Laureen was just talking about, because we are an open infrastructure, and we host a lot of books, and as you know, LLMs really like to train on books because that's good content to learn for natural language processing. So yes, we have been severely affected, and I really promised myself not to be too gloomy in this panel, because I was very gloomy in the last Charleston panel in Charleston, where Tim Lloyd from Liblinks was organizing a panel on evil AI bot scraping. But it is a very big problem. I think there are some dark sides which not often are addressed when we hear about the wonders of AI in innovation and in its let's say economic potential. But I think it's important to not forget that these AI tech companies, they really thrive on many years of enabling an ecosystem, a scholarly ecosystem with open content, which is just available and which is useful for these AI tech companies that, as Daniel said, don't really pay anything back. And in our case, we've seen a tremendous rise in traffic, scraping, just like any library repository. And I think you know, when you hit around 200 to 300 requests on your servers per second, it's getting quite severe. And even with our servers hosted at CERN, we've faced a lot of issues, and we've spent enormous amounts of human resources trying to figure out how to manage that without filtering away the good actors, especially the researchers, who of course also use AI agents. So it's really difficult. I think financially we would have been in a very difficult place if we didn't have this partnership with CERN. Of course we learn a lot from it, and I agree with the former comment that when we face challenges, we really have to come together and we have to think more creatively. But I think let's say the counterpart is so big that it's really difficult for smaller infrastructures like ourselves to find the right, balanced conversation. And I hope that, for example, the bridge project that Lauren mentions could help us come together as a commons, as a collective to try and sort of find the good side, basically redefine the ecosystem, which of course will keep evolving very fast. So we need to somehow anticipate quite a lot of complexity while finding this new balance. But if we don't, I really am quite worried about the consequences, because if we see either open infrastructures being washed away, or if content becomes more closed, then it will have a very negative impact on what AI tools are based on, right? So it will be quite devastating also, of course, for the scholarly ecosystem being able to thrive, and we'll see that things will get sort of going the wrong way. So we've spent decades now working towards open science with a lot of great results, and I think there is a danger that we could see some step going backwards. On the good side, and I think it's important to really focus on that. Of course, we see also that we can implement AI tools in our workflows. We can automate things. There are quite many things we can do that we are exploring. And on the, let's say, user side, I think again that we have incredible opportunities to really harness from the collections for educational purposes, bridging between academia and civil society. So I think there's so much opportunity, but it requires that this, let's say, destruction phase also becomes more creative and more balanced.
Perfect. Thank you, Niels. So I think before we move on to some more questions, I want to kind of get the audience involved a little bit. So I'll ask you something I shouldn't ask you at 4 p.m. to raise your hand, especially in such hot weather. But my question to you is, do you share the same perspective as our panel here? If you do, please raise your hand. If not, keep them down. I'll give you a second to decide.
There seem to be. We seem to have some varying perspectives up here.
Correct, but I want the amalgamate perspective. Let me actually make that a bit clearer. I think it all heads into one direction. Of course, we're not having enough information come through from bigger AI companies, for example. Also from the gloom and hope perspective that was given. I don't think you were gloomy, Niels. But from that perspective, the reason why I want to do this is I think this is not a unilateral, one-way, asymmetrical conversation where this panel can answer all the perspectives. There's much more perspectives in the room. So with that being said, this is one more time, would you raise your hands if you agree with the current panel? Okay, well, I'm going to come to the audience and Sir, if you don't mind, would you be able to tell us what varying perspective to the panel that you can give us? You didn't raise your hand. You can say anything you want. Is it all important?
I guess where I'm coming from is the conversation has been about the scholarly industry, which is a subset of the problem, because there is a very long tail of knowledge producing organizations out there that are not part of the scholarly system, and they are being eaten alive by the AI engines. And they have two worries. One is what cost. The other is how on earth are they ever going to get their content into the AI engines in a reliable way? And more to the point, when will they ever know that their content is being used there?
Brilliant. And I saw some other non-raised hands. We will have opportunity for one more. You were a bit hesitant, Tanya. Would you like to say anything with what's it called?
No, my hesitation was because there were such varying perspectives. I agreed with some and not with others. So that's yeah, okay. I am perhaps a bit more on the side of hope and a little less on the side of gloom. I think naturally you have to be like that, otherwise we'll all go to bed and not wake up in the morning. I think that this is an opportunity for anyone involved in this industry to come together collectively, and that is one thing that this has achieved. And that's where I'm hopeful, is that actually it's bringing people to the room all together with a common frenemy that is opening dialogue, and everybody's being more transparent in their communication with one another. And I think there's hope there.
Brilliant. So you did have a perspective. But on the word of frenemies, I think there's a lot of potential frenemies in this room. So it's the whole point of me doing this is because, again, we speak about communities and coming together with various perspectives and trying to sort things, but open dialogue is the most important thing at the end of the day, to be able to talk about it, not just in a panel, but when you leave the actual panel. To what Daniel said earlier, there are these AI companies, and the conversation you'd have with an AI company, you have something concrete to ask them. So that is what we need to ask each other, some concrete questions in order for things to progress. So we'll of course come to actual question time. I just thought that will help wake you guys up a little bit as well. It's late into the day, just kidding. If anyone, and thank you for both of you for contributing. Anyone who has any views online, please do post them. We will of course be able to read them out loud. Now, I'd like to go to a group question. We're gonna look at the economic side of things because, you know, with Philippe, he really brought us into that perspective. So if we think in economic terms, who is gaining and who is losing as scholarly communication is reshaped? Are we actually redistributing value or just relocating it? Who would like to go first?
Okay. So maybe just some numbers to start off with. I think a reasonable estimate of the total global research ecosystem is something around $125 billion a year. That's kind of high level ballpark. When you consider that one Silicon Valley company has $600 billion to spend this year on what it's doing with information processing, model development. I mean, so our entire industry isn't quite a rounding error, but it is a much smaller number than one company is spending. And that's without taking into account what the other 3 or 4 that are able to do this are spending. So very pragmatically, you kind of have to look at what is the economic bet that's going on. And the economic bet that's going on is essentially that through creating these technologies, you can get back at least what you're spending over a period of time so that the investors get their money back. That's the fundamental logic in the space that they're working. Now, it turns out that if you actually do the calculations, if you work out how much money they can make from the corporate world, let's say, that is nowhere near enough money to get the payback they need on the investments they've already made, let alone the investments they're going to make at a reasonable rate of return for the investor. So there has to be a bigger play. And I have a theory, so I'm going to put this out there as a thing which I invite you to disagree with and try and take down, because I can't think of a better theory right now. So this is my theory of the day, if you will. So my theory is that if you can't monetize kind of the existing ecosystem at a level, what you must try to do is develop a technology which is going to allow you to own all future technologies. Because the monetization of all future technologies is going to be enough to pay back. And at this level of investment, it's almost the only thing that's enough to pay back. All of thought that suggests that the AI companies have our sector in their sights. Because what our sector does is it innovates, it creates new knowledge, and broadly speaking, we make that knowledge collectively available to the world to innovate on. But that breaks the way in which the AI companies could conceivably make enough money. So they want to privatize research, I think, and they want to own that privatized research so that they can diversify their business model in the future, not to merely sell you LLMs and knowledge-based systems, but to sell you new materials, to sell you new healthcare treatments, to sell you new drugs. The entire kind of human stack would be what their aim is. And perhaps that's a little doomy, and perhaps a little big picture. But I fear that unless we kind of look into the void, if we look into the abyss, then we can see what that thing is and we can act to make sure that doesn't happen. So to try and bring it a little bit more positively. But I think you have to look into the abyss first to work out what it is you're trying to make sure doesn't happen. And so those are the kind of mind games I play to work out how I should try to act positively in the ecosystem to avoid stuff like this happening.
Perfect. Alicia, Niels, or Lauren, is there anything you'd like to add?
I love what Daniel just said because it's a big challenge, right? But a problem shared is a problem halved or 30th or 200th, given the size of the community here. Systems and things that have served us well up until the recent past, I think, are at risk of no longer doing so. And this may not resonate with everyone's perspectives or ideology in the room, but I think up until relatively recently, markets and capitalism have worked relatively well. But I think we have tipped over into a toxic space where that is no longer the case. And AI, I think, because of the factors that Daniel has very articulately presented, is a great example of that. Once knowledge creation and dissemination becomes controlled by very large, very powerful actors, more powerful than nation states, we as a species are screwed. And that's exactly where we are. And we're not able, I think, at the minute to have very sophisticated conversations about systems that can work but are not necessarily working for everyone or in exactly the right ways at the moment, and how those could be adapted. We, as a species, seem to get really entrenched and hung up on whether we're right or not, rather than being able to deal with ambiguity and nuance and complexity. And I don't think our policy framework is going to evolve fast enough. I'm getting gloomy again, but really, I'm not hearing the kind of leadership that we need at a planetary level to get us out of this current position. So if anybody's got any good ideas about how to change that, I'd love to hear them.
I love that you handed the mic to me.
Because we're looking for some hope now. There's been
I need hope?
gloom, now hope.
I can't resist to insert a little bit of linguistics into this talk, because one of the things that we do when we talk about AI, we talk about like AI is coming for our jobs and AI is going to ruin the world. AI is a tool. It's a thing. It's a computer program, if we're going to be really, really like reductive about it. It's not a thinking, breathing entity. It's not an enemy. It's not a something that can think. One of the things that I go back to when I start to feel the doom is this is a tool. And as a human being, I can choose to use a tool for something that I think it's good at, or I can choose to reject it if it's failing me, if it's broken. AI is a tool. It's the AI companies. It's the organizations that are doing this to us. It's somebody who chose to point those AI bots at my repository. It's somebody who chose to make AI policy the big thing for a university to research instead of basic fundamental research. There are entities, actors, humans, companies. I'm from the United States, so we tend to confuse companies and human beings. That was a joke.
Everyone, cue laughing.
Please laugh. Sorry, a little traumatic moment there. But the thing is that we have people we can hold accountable, and we are humans. We have a long history of, well, when other people aren't doing the thing that we want and that we are being harmed, we band together. We come together, we show solidarity, we act as a collective, and we can change it. We just have to have the will, and maybe we have to have a strong voice that brings us all together. And we have to stop fighting each other. We have to look for ways to cross these bridges that we have just created for ourselves. Like, I always think about this sort of mythical divide between nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations. Yes, they're different business models. Yes, they have different outcomes for their money, but that's all just social construction. It's all just something we have created, different ways of operating. We often agree more on things than we like to admit. And I'm hoping that in trying to overcome those divides, we can get towards something larger that actually benefits everybody, and stop worrying so much about all these individual differences and details, and work towards a collective good for humanity against this tool that we don't like. Somebody is raising their hand, and
yeah. So Richard is having a burning question over there. He can't contain himself.
I'm gonna hand the
that's
mic
the kind
to
of questions we
Niels
like
to take this question.
So I'd like to ask the three of you that have spoken, what is the qualitative difference between scholarly communication being controlled by 5 big AI companies against it being controlled by 5 for-profit publishers? I mean, you say
Yes.
that we're all in community together, but it's just a different overlord.
Yes.
So I would say there's a big difference, actually, and it's in scale, and it's in proximity to the research community itself. Publishers of all shapes and sizes and business models are close.
Richard, you need a mic so the people online can hear. So I'll hand it back to you, but I think let Alicia finish first. Yeah, go right ahead, and then I'll come to you with the mic.
Yep. So I would scale, proximity to the research institution, and then there is something about the escape from, I think, national regulation and control, which has radically accelerated, which feels very different to me.
Yes. I buy into everything that Alicia's just said. I think that's all true. I think I'm imagining something even worse in my mind, though. I think I'm imagining that. So I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about what an AI scientist would be, or an AI researcher. And having talked to the AI companies, I know that's something that they are all interested in doing at some level. So I think the concern that I have is that at some point they are successful in building something that is an AI researcher, which is then, I think, a lot more corrosive to the academic ecosystem as we experience it. Because I think that certainly in the area of applied research, and I don't think it's necessarily de facto truth or blue skies or fundamental research, an AI could be much more efficient than a human researcher. And consequently, much of the upside and the economic translation of technology could reside with the AI companies. I think in comparison, the publishers are, I mean, yes, there's a margin on the transit of information into a domain, but I think that's a much lower margin compared to owning all of knowledge.
I just want to quickly add something. I am the moderator, but I think I have a perspective because there's a thematic rift between bad AI companies who really are bad publishers who are really this thing. So going back to a favorite TV series of mine, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Every season you had a big bad, you know? Every season you had a big bad. But they had similarities in common and they were completely different in the scale of evil that existed. So I think it's very easy to antagonize and also to be able to find someone to antagonize. Like what you said, Lauren, sometimes for-profit and not-for-profit publishers, they're probably agree a lot on the same things. I've been in these conversations and they do agree on certain things, but I'd say open dialogue, what we were just talking about, is so crucial because I think when I was sitting in panels with the big blast of ChatGPT, everybody's like, oh, this AI is going to take us over. It's just so bad. It's so evil. I think it's really easy to do that. And sometimes that is destructive in the bad way. So communication. I had seen a hand up here, but before that, Niels, would you please add something before we go into the...
Yeah, well, thank you. The list is getting long now because there were so many points made, so I must think where to start. But I think to Rich's question that AI companies are basically just being smart, right? So they are thriving on content that has been published for decades, centuries, and they're utilizing it. And if you're a profit-seeking corporation with such smart tools, why wouldn't you? So I think they're not content producers. They're very different in that. But I think coming back to the second point in the audience from a woman about this challenge bringing together the different stakeholders in the community. I think that's a very good point, which is really how we must address this. And it gives us a wake-up call, I don't know, or at least it gives us an opportunity to bring together the different voices that make scholarly communication, because it's a complex situation. Publishers haven't solved this yet. I just attended the PubTech conference adjacent to the Beijing Book Fair, and there were publishers all over the place coming up with the same conclusion that we haven't figured this out. There's a big challenge ahead of us, and it's really important that we act on it because we need to ensure that we can trust the knowledge that is being produced. And publishers, as well as what we do as infrastructures, is about creating trust in that knowledge. If we can't trust it, it's worthless. And it's also it will become worthless for the AI companies, because then it will become a sort of a bad loop of AI content, AI generated content that thrives on AI generated content, and that's what is normally called AI rot. So I think that is why we need to have, and why the AI tech companies should also have an interest in having a conversation with the scholarly community, because if they don't, they will lose what is precious to them now. But currently, they're very busy racing against each other and developing fantastic tools that we can really also benefit from. And then one final thing to the first comment, I heard Toby Green in the room, and I think it's a very good point, of course, not all of this is about scholarly content. It's also there much other content, of course, out there. But it also, to me, it's important to really emphasize that we are talking about it as if AI companies are just getting all content. And of course, they're not. There's a huge global bias towards sort of Western hemisphere content. So we are missing out on big parts of what is being produced in scholarly communication in countries all over the world. And I think these biases are then being replicated a lot, and we see that every time we prompt there is a lot of bias in that system. So I think it's really an important ambition to keep thinking global about this, and for example with our directory of open access books, we really want to reach out to those countries where there are content being produced which is currently not part of, let's say, the AI engines. So also the type of content that Toby works with is really important, and it must also be recognized, because that's another big issue, that we don't see any acknowledgements, any recognition about publisher rights, copyrights, etc., attribution, and so on from AI tech companies. The current referencing is very poor, and it's a big issue, especially in like in Europe, where we don't have fair use. It's really a big issue. So I think those are big questions that we should take on in a constructive, positive way. But as said, do it jointly together, and I'm sure we will at some point find a new balance in scholarly communication. Thank you.